Hello, my name is Eric Coffie, and I've been doing government contracts for the past 15, 16 plus years. And I'm going to give you my top 50 government contracting tips in the next 15 minutes. The first thing is that if you're looking on SAM.gov, only about 5% of all opportunities ever make it to SAM.gov. So if you're only looking at SAM.gov, you're missing out on 95% of opportunities. 50+% of contracts are awarded using what they call task orders. So if you are trying to build a long-term sustainable business, you want to look at how do you get more task order type of contracts. IDIQ stands for indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, and that is one of the main vehicles that the government uses in order to make awards to small businesses and start to issue task order contracts against IDIQs. If you're thinking that you need to be in business for 2 years in order to get government contracts, you're wrong. You do not have to be in business for 2 years in order to qualify for government contracts. You simply need to register your organization. If you're thinking that you need to be a U.S. citizen to get government contracts, that's also not true. Non-U.S. citizens are eligible to do government contracts as well. You simply have to register in the System for Award Management database to qualify and be eligible for contracts. A lot of things that people miss in registering for SAM.gov or System for Award Management contracts is doing their SBA profile. That's also known as Dynamic Small Business Search Profile. It's part 2 to your SAM.gov registration. Make sure you do that in order to qualify for the government does what they call market research. Market research is one of the things that a lot of small businesses fail to do, and that hinders their success and growth. And so some of the ways at which we are able to do market research is by doing what's called sources sought. If you've not responded to sources sought or RFIs using SAM.gov System for Award Management database, then you're missing out on a huge opportunity to do market research for your business. If you lose a government contract, make sure that if you bid a contract and you're not successfully the awardee, that you request what's called a debrief. Debrief allows you to talk to the government client, the customer, the agency to find out what you did wrong so that you can improve the next time. If you're looking to research past contract history, you want to use what's called FPDS. Frank, Paul, David, Sam, also known as Federal Procurement Data Systems, and you want to use that site to research past contract opportunities. Another platform or site that you can use to research past contracts is USASpending.gov. Again, when you're looking at researching competitors, customers, people who are buying what you sell, is the second site that I use, USASpending.gov. If you're wondering how do you price out labor costs for certain projects, you can use a tool by GSA Calc. It's under buy.gsa.gov, and that tool will help you find out what are the price ranges for certain types of skills. For example, if you want to look up what does it cost to do a plumber or an AC mechanic and then a level 2 AC mechanic in this particular region, it'll give you price ranges for what those skills and jobs pay. FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulation, is the handbook or the guide that all governs most of the contracting shops and offices and agencies. However, there are a few exclusions, like, for example, FAA. FAA follows a different set of rules, so they're not subject to following the rules of the FAR. There are 5 main socio-economic categories when you're dealing with the government. That is women-owned small business, veteran-owned small business, service-disabled veteran-owned small business. That's HUBZone business. Then you have 8A business, which is also known as small disadvantaged business. And then you have generic small business. All socio-economic programs require 51% ownership by a U.S. citizen, except HUBZone. HUBZone business has its own set of rules and terms that governs it. So you may want to look at the requirements for HUBZone because that is the only one that a non-US citizen can be eligible for. When you register in SAM.gov, you are already a small business based on your classification. So when you put in your revenue size or your employee count, you're already designated a small business. You have to do nothing else. Just register and put in your revenues or employee count. And based on those numbers, you're already determined a small business. If you want to know how to choose NAICS codes, you can look at what's called the size standards table by the SBA. And in the size standard table by the SBA, it'll give you the NAICS codes and the dollar threshold or employee threshold that makes you non-eligible to be a small business under that NAICS code. If you're wondering what an NAICS code is, it stands for North American Industry Classification System, and it's just a code that the government uses to determine the type of industry that you're in and also the size of business you are based on employee or revenues. PSC code is another form of which the government tries to understand what industry that you're a sector in, but it's called product service code. So it's basically looking at the types of products and how they're categorized. Again, another tool that's useful when you're researching opportunities specific to your business. Other government portals that buy government services like yours is DIBS, which is run by DLA or Defense Logistics Agency. And the DIBS database is where the government procures a lot of product sales, and they procure somewhere to the tune of 2,000 to 5,000 solicitations every single day on product sales. NECO is another site that the government uses to procure goods, and that one's ran by the Navy, and it's NECO, where again, it's another database that the government uses to solicit opportunities. The Mentor Protege Program. The SBA has a Mentor Protege Program that they run and they operate, and it's a way in which a small company can work with a larger business to help mentor them and grow and scale. DoD also has its own Mentor Protege program that is separate from the SBA program, specifically for those contractors that are looking to work with the DoD and find a mentor in that space. SBA Subnet, that is where the government puts out subcontract opportunities for small businesses like yours. And the thing about SBA Subnet is you can go on there and find prime contractors that are looking for subcontract opportunities. Unice Marketplace is another way to go and look at opportunities. It's a reverse auction site where the government lists on their particular bids, and then you go out there and you compete to see if you can provide that good or service at the lowest price possible. SCORE is an organization that provides free mentorship for small businesses. They're based in most states and most major cities. You could go online and find out where the nearest SCORE mentor is to your particular location and try and see if you can find someone that may be a specialist in your particular industry or niche. SBDCs, Small Business Development Centers. These are centers that, again, provide free technical assistance, training, mentorship for small businesses. They also offer lots of classes and courses on everything from AI to proposal writing. Again, another free resource that's probably somewhere in your backyard. Just Google SBDC to find the location nearest to you. Apex Accelerators is probably the largest known free resources specifically for those wanting to do federal contracts. That organization, Apex Accelerator, if you just type it in, it's paid for by your tax dollars. They help you do things like get registered in SAM. They may help you determine your eligibility for a socio-economic certification. And then depending upon the location, they may provide some additional free technical assistance and training, helping you find resources like doing bid matching and also doing some of the initial market research to find out what customer buys what you're trying to sell to the government. Your DUNS number is no longer required for registration. However, DUNS numbers are readily used for business credit. So even though you don't need DUNS number to apply and register anymore for SAM.gov, you still should register for your DUNS number if you're thinking about getting business credit in the future and you want to qualify to get loans that are not personally guaranteed by you. If you're thinking about getting grants, you want to head over to grants.gov and register on that platform where you can sort through thousands of grant opportunities based on codes, industries, sectors, and keywords. Login.gov is the new portal that you have to register in order to both be eligible for SAM.gov and also grants.gov. And I'm seeing that the Login.gov portal is the initial onset that's going to be opening the doors to more and more agencies, because if you have a Login.gov, it's kind of like having a verified ID. It then allows you to go into other government databases as a vendor. If you're wanting more federal contract training, the SBA has what's called Empower to Grow, also formerly known as 7J, and that provides training specifically on federal contracting. So if you're thinking about doing specifically federal contracting, if you were to look up the SBA's Empower to Grow program, it talks about how to do federal contracting, and there's organizations that provide free resources and training technical assistance on that. I personally, at one point, I did some of those trainings for some of those organizations and I was some of the experts they brought in to teach you about how to do specific tasks. If you're looking for places to attend events, govevents.com is a great place to start. I always go to govevents.com to find events specific to my industry or specific to an agency that I want to work with. Another place to find events is on SAM.gov. They have events posted there as well. And then if you're thinking about joining an agency in terms of an organization that supports federal government, SAMI is a good organization to look at joining if you're thinking about getting into construction. If you want to get into IT, AFCEA is one to look at for if you're thinking about doing anything related to IT. And then NDIA is another organization. It's for small businesses. So it's the National Defense Industrial Association. You can look them up, NDIA, and they have their own set of events as well that you can attend. But that one has more generic type of events that's just all encompassing small businesses. All right, staying with the subject of IT firms. If you're an IT firm, a couple of things that you may want to look at. One is called BAA, Broad Agency Announcements. It's a search that you can use in SAM.gov to find specific opportunities in IT. CSO is another search that you can use. Commercial Solutions Openings is another area where you can find open calls for IT solutions specifically for given agencies. OTA, also known as other transactions, is a third search that IT companies and also anyone that does any type of R&D opportunities, they may be interested in looking up specifically for that purpose. Now, going back to OTs or OTAs is also known for, there are groups called consortiums. So if you have a technical solution specifically to, let's say, LiDAR or solar or sonar, any type of technical solutions that may be solving a defense issue, look up consortiums. And there's all types of consortiums out there that are geared towards helping bring in non-traditional contractors that provide those types of solutions. PIAs is another type of agreement that the government uses to work with labs and national laboratories. Again, for those of you who are in the R&D space, it might be something worth looking into. Sole source. Sole source is where the government actually gives you a contract directly, and it's considered non-bid contracts. Sole source contracts are typically awarded to organizations depending upon whether you are a socio-economic designation or you may have a specialty area that the government needs that no one else can do. Simplified acquisition, that is the way in which the government says, okay, we're going to spend dollars under a certain threshold, and under that simplified acquisition threshold, the government typically is going to go with a small business. Now, in the past, that was a requirement, but given the changing landscape of things, I no longer think that that is fully a requirement. However, if you were to identify any type of simplified acquisition opportunities, the government is likely to go with you as a small business. The other thing to note about that is that the government can, through simplified acquisition, sole source contracts to small businesses, and also they can choose not to put those types of opportunities, depending upon the size of them, on publicly on SAM.gov. ANCs, you may have heard the term, stands for Alaskan Native Corporations. These are tribal-owned entities that have special provisions under the 8A program to do sole source awards up to $100 million. Typical 8A companies or individually owned 8As have sole source provisions to do only up to $4.5 million, which makes a huge distinction between them and the ANCs or also the tribally owned 8A firms. If you're looking to research goods and services, look at GSA. GSA has lots and lots of schedules, from IT schedules to logistics schedules to everything under the sun for which they buy. Again, remember, GSA is also, when they put you on these schedules, that they're allowing just a certain pool of people to qualify for these particular opportunities. So the more likely you are to get on a schedule, it's another way that the government can actually buy from your small business. When bidding, consider using something like a bid, no bid sheet, which just essentially is a parameter or a set of rules that governs when to make a decision as to should you pursue this opportunity or not pursue this opportunity. Remember, most of us do not have unlimited time nor unlimited money. So this is a great guideline that governs whether or not you should consider to bid or not bid this opportunity. Forecast list. A forecast list is used in order to help agencies project what they're going to be spending their money on in the upcoming years. So forecast list is a great way to find out where a federal agency or office is going to be spending their dollars in the next coming 6 to 18 months. Capabilities briefing is when you meet with someone from the government and you talk about your company and you get a chance to showcase your differentiators, your expertise, and how you can help them solve their particular needs and capabilities. Small Business Specialists, or OSTBU's, Office of Small Disadvantaged Business. These are the offices that allow you to first introduce yourself. Their job is to help you to break into an agency or an office, and they're the ones that essentially can tell you who you should talk to about this particular opportunity. When you schedule to meet with an OSTBU or a Small Business Specialist, this is request of doing a capabilities briefing, which is discussed. And ideally, you'd like to have what we call a forecast list with you, as well as your capability statement. Most small business have heard of capability statement. However, what we like to say is when you're doing a capability statement, do not make it a mile long and don't put 100 NAICS codes on there, because what's going to show is that you have inexperience and that you have no expertise in a given area, and then that's going to prevent them from knowing how they can help you or what direction they could point you in. Be very specific and what it is that you are going after. If you have multiple skill sets, then you might want to make multiple capability statements just so that you sound at least competent and capable, that you can actually deliver upon what it is that the government is looking for in that particular agency. Remember, people who buy construction also may buy IT, but that person's going to see you as confused and not as an actual true organization that has all of these types of specialties. Particularly if you are a small business or a mom and pop business, they're going to know that you can't be expert at two things at once. And the last thing I want to leave you with is try and focus in on one niche. You want to do what they call land and expand. So again, if you could start off with one area of expertise, you can land in that area. And then from there, as you get to have a relationship with the client and the customers, you can expand from that. Hope this has been helpful for all of you guys out there. So if you're interested in getting our cheat sheet on how to win federal contracts for your small business, visit federalhelpcenter.com, where we have a community of experts, coaches, and we host webinars, trainings, and we also have tools to help you get one step closer to winning your first contract, expanding your contract opportunities, or growing your base. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed the video.